Well, when it comes to the Western Conference playoff picture, with 24 games remaining on the regular season schedule, the Edmonton Oilers find themselves right in the thick of things after celebrating the franchise's 1,500th NHL victory on Wednesday. A 4-3 result over the Washington Capitals, as I'm pleased to welcome you to the panel presented by Sportsnet. Tony Brar here alongside Jack Michaels and Cam Moon subbing in for Bob Stauffer. Cam, good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure to see you. And thankfully,
what are you, a game show host?
No, always great to see you because I know it was a little challenging with the Google Maps and the Apple Maps, but you found your way. Great to see you. Great to see you. Well, we're on location here in a new, beautiful show home in the community of Brenton at Glen Ridding Ravine, a brand new model called the Cyrus. You got to check it out. You could tour the home for yourself or take the virtual tour located on the Coventry Homes website. And as we continue to look at some of the pictures here of the show home, from a beautiful home to an important homestand, Jack, for the Edmonton Oilers. Obviously, a big result on Wednesday over Ovechkin and the Capitals. Let's talk about the importance of that victory, not only for the points in the standings, but the tone it sets for the rest of this five-gamer.
Well, as you know, Tony, I mean, the Oilers are a little banged up right now. I thought Edmonton's first victory over Washington came when the Capitals were compromised. There was no Alexander Ovechkin. He was out with COVID. No TJ Oshie. No Anthony Mantha. On Wednesday night, the script was kind of flipped as the Oilers were still missing Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Jesse Puljujärvi, but they got a boost from Zach Kassian back in the lineup and the 32-year-old vet, Brad Malone, who's been impressive. He's been our hit of the game twice on Sportsnet, and he responded with his first goal, first points of any kind in the league in more than 6 years. And that's a huge lift, not only, tangibly on the scoreboard, but for the bench. That pumps everyone up when you see a lifer like that who's been an unbelievable foot soldier for Jay Woodcroft for the last 5 seasons down in Bakersfield to come up and deliver that kind of performance at the NHL level in a nationally televised game with full capacity at Rogers Place. The whole atmosphere Wednesday night was just a fabulous one. And it's the kind of victory that, yes, it counts 2 points in the standings, but from Edmonton's standpoint, you hope there's a carryover effect and a galvanizing effect for this club moving forward, because as you suggest, Tony, this is an absolutely vital homestand as we speak. Oilers 1 point out of a playoff spot, 24 games to go, less than a third of the season. It's all on the line. So you need to get going, and at home is the way to do it.
You're always going to get contributions from the top guys, Cam. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl on showcase once again in overtime. But let's quickly talk about a player Jack quickly mentioned, and that was Brad Malone. I mean, first point since February of 2016, first goal since December of 2015. Jay Woodcroft said he's been a soldier for this organization. That has to bode well for the rest of this club.
Well, I think it does. You look at, here's a guy that very recently wasn't even on an NHL contract and had to battle in the American Hockey League, had belief in himself that he could make his way back to the NHL one day. I mean, it would have been easy to pull the pin on that and just call it a day, maybe go play in Europe for a while or don't play at all. But he stayed with it and had belief in himself. And Jay Woodcroft saw what he could do at the American League level, and now that he's come up to the NHL, has provided a spark. There's a real love of the game that you can clearly see, and there's one of the reasons why a guy would have stuck with it as long as he did. That pure love of the game, a goal and an assist, and like Jack said, it fired up the bench, it fired up the rink. It was great to see.
A really telling component of yesterday's post-game availability with Brad Malone was when he said he was on vacation and he told his family, I'm going to make this NHL team. I'm going to go into the NHL training camp and try to earn a roster spot. Again, just alluding to the passion of the game that he has. But a really telling sign for me, Jack, was when Brad Malone showed up in the hotel in Philadelphia and how his teammates responded to seeing him. That right there is just a testament of how great of a teammate he is. But speaking of great teammates, the Oilers right now out without an important part of their forward group, and that being Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Jesse Puljujärvi. But when it comes to the value of RNH, he touches so many parts of the game that the Oilers will certainly welcome once he's back.
Well, and again, he's probably a week or two away, but as you mentioned, and again, you look at that Washington game, and it wasn't just Malone. I mean, think about it. Cody Ceci chips in, Kyler Yamamoto with a big goal. So, again, it kind of fosters the team contributions that Connor McDavid talked about at the pregame skate, and, of course, it's kind of fitting that the captain is able to punctuate that. With Ryan Nugent-Hopkins' addition, you are going to get 20 minutes in your lineup. And more importantly, you're going to get, 4 minutes on the power play, 3 minutes on the penalty kill. I mean, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is all over the place. I mean, and I think in the aftermath of the Calgary loss, you heard Leon Draisaitl kind of allude to the fact, look, we're not making excuses, but let's not forget who Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is. So, obviously, his addition, Jesse Puljujärvi's addition, it's going to strengthen the roster. I mean, we're talking about significant regulars. Tyson Barrie, coming back to the hockey club. Chris Russell, potentially. These are all regular NHL players. Combined with Cassian, that's 5 or 6 guys that Edmonton's getting back. So, look, at this particular point in time, other teams have already gotten those players back. I think most teams Edmonton's playing have gotten healthy a little bit quicker than the Oilers did. The injuries for the Oilers came a little bit later in the season, so now they're just getting healthy. But it might be just in time for that final push. But you've got to take care of home games. And last night's win over Washington, so crucial in that endeavor because it hadn't been going that well at home for the Oilers lately. They'd been road warriors more so than at home. With a ton of home games in March, you got to cash in on those. You got to find a way to put yourself in position to get into position.
Absolutely. Now, one topic of conversation here in Oil Country all season long has been between the pipes, Mooner. And you're a former goaltender yourself, a former Western Hockey League goaltender, so maybe you can kind of provide a little bit more insight than I would be able to in terms of Mikko Koskinen. Of course, a third of the way in the season in, a lot of criticism went on number 19's shoulder. However, he's 8-1-2 in his last 11 starts. He's really showing well, had a .920 save percentage heading into last night's game, in the previous 11 games. What are you seeing different from Mikko Koskinen? And then, Jack, maybe you can piggyback on that.
Well, I'm seeing a guy that if it doesn't go his way at some point in the game, he's bouncing back from it. It's not spiraling into something that is taking his team out of the game. Last night is a prime example. TJ Oshie gets a goal down the right wing that on a better day, you'd probably like to have that one, that it kind of went through. Did it ruin his day? No, it didn't. And he made big saves when he needed big saves. And that was one of the keys to the victory. There was a lot of keys to the victory. But it's not always how many saves you make. It's when you make them. If the game's on the line and you can come up with a big stop, that's going to be the difference between a win and a loss. And Koskinen had to make some big saves down the stretch in that game and was able to push his team to a victory. That's what I'm seeing from him in the last couple of months that maybe we didn't see as much earlier, is just that mental toughness to have something go not well and then turn it around and bring it back so it's a positive later on in the game. So I think that aspect of his game has improved greatly, and he's been playing very well. He gives his team a chance to win.
Well, first of all, I'm glad there was no truth to the rumors that Mooner had this devious plan to lock Panger in the stockroom and get on the TNT telecast last night. That was a relief to me. I mean, I respect my colleagues, but I don't want to know that side of them. Now, as far as Mikko Koskinen, I think, to be honest with you, at 8-1-2 over his last 11 games, he's given the Oilers some life when they need it at the goaltending position. But I'm not so sure that Edmonton's going to roll with Mikko Koskinen for, say, 20 of the final 24 games. Because over time, at least in previous incarnations when Mikko's been playing well, the workload has kind of caught up. I do think, much like the rest of the roster, and much like, Connor McDavid talked about, we're going to need contributions from everyone. I think the same goes for the goaltending position. I would not be surprised at all if Mike Smith and Stuart Skinner also logged important victories if the Oilers reach the playoffs. In other words, I don't think Edmonton gets in because Mikko Koskinen is going to win 18 of the next 24 games. I don't see that. I think they're going to need other goaltenders to come in and step up and deliver the kind of performance, because it's a demanding schedule. They've got the one game in 6 days against Tampa with 2 off days flanked. And then after that, it just gets really tough down the stretch in terms of a workload. So like the rest of the club, I think goaltending is going to be a 2 or potentially 3-headed monster if the Oilers are able to get into the postseason.
Jack mentioned stepping up. Well, the Oilers stepped up in a big way, ending a 3-game slide on Wednesday. 4-3 victory over the Washington Capitals to set the tone on this 5-game homestand. Well, they got an important test on Saturday against Tampa. As for Jack, Cam, and myself, Tony, I'm pleased to sign off on the panel presented by Sportsnet.